My name is Evelyn Carter, and I am 68 years old. For most of my life, I believed I could read people the way others read, weather signs, small shifts in tone, nervous habits, pauses that lasted a second too long. 35 years as a probate and property attorney had sharpened that instinct. I had seen greed dressed as concern, control masked as love, and cruelty hidden behind paperwork and polite smiles. What I had never imagined, never even allowed myself to consider, was that one day, those instincts would scream at me over a plastic tray in a shopping mall food court, warning me that my own daughter was quietly being destroyed right in front of me. Not by strangers, not by criminals in dark alleys, but by the people who were supposed to love her most. I noticed her before she noticed me. She sat alone near the edge of the food court, shoulders slightly hunched, dressed in a loose convenience store uniform that swallowed her frame. Her sneakers were scuffed, the laces fraying. She was counting coins, actual coins, in her palm before sliding them back into her pocket and staring down at a paper cup of coffee like it was something precious. This was Maya, my daughter. The same woman who, 2 years earlier, had been driving a nearly new crossover I helped her finance, wearing tailored dresses, laughing easily. The same woman who once argued constitutional law with me over dinner for fun. I stood there longer than I should have, watching her rub her temples like the weight of the world lived behind her eyes. When I finally said her name, she flinched, not startled, afraid. That single reaction told me more than any confession ever could. "Mama," she said softly, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her gaze darted past me, scanning the crowd. I asked where Lily was, my 5-year-old granddaughter, who was never far from her mother. Maya told me Lily was at the park with Caleb and his mother, Veronica. The way she said it was rehearsed, like she'd practiced the line. When I asked why she wasn't with them, her answers came too fast, too smooth. Errands, timing, no big deal. Then I asked about her car. She looked away, said Caleb needed it. His work truck had issues. I asked what she drove. She laughed nervously and said, "The bus." I looked closer, then really looked. The hollowing of her cheeks, the tremor in her hands, the way she kept checking her phone, like a guard clocking minutes between inspections. Something old and cold settled in my chest. This wasn't stress. This was fear. I told her to sit, not ask told. That tone still worked. I bought her food and watched her eat like someone unsure when the next meal would come. When I asked her directly what was happening, she broke, not loudly, not dramatically. She whispered it, as if the truth itself could hear her. Caleb and Veronica controlled everything. The house, the money, her paycheck, her bank access. She slept on an air mattress in their garage temporarily, Veronica said, until Maya proved she was responsible enough. Lily lived upstairs. Visits were supervised, privileges revoked if Maya stepped out of line. And the threat, the one that kept her silent, was always the same. Say anything, leave, resist, and you'll lose your daughter forever. By the time she finished, my hands were clenched so tightly my nails cut into my palms. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I did something far more dangerous. I decided I did not confront anyone that day. That was the first rule I learned early in my career. When someone is being controlled, noise is dangerous. I walked Maya to the bus stop like nothing was wrong, kissed her cheek, and watched her disappear into the crowd with the posture of someone trying to take up as little space in the world as possible. The moment she was gone, I sat in my car and allowed myself exactly 30 seconds to feel at the rage, the grief, the guilt that I had not seen this sooner. Then I started the engine and became something else entirely. I was no longer just a mother. I was a woman who understood systems, leverage, and the difference between what people say is legal and what actually survives daylight. By the time I reached home, I had already outlined what needed to happen, quietly, methodically, without warning. That evening, I made 3 calls. The first was to Naomi Feld, who had been my paralegal for nearly 2 decades before I retired. Naomi now worked for one of the sharpest family law attorneys in the county, and she owed me more favors than she could count. I didn't explain everything, only enough to make her serious. Financial isolation, coercive control, child leverage, I said. There was a pause on the line. Then Naomi said, "I'll clear the calendar, tomorrow." The second call was to Victor Hale, a private investigator, who had once testified in a fraud case I dismantled, piece by piece. Victor didn't ask questions he didn't need answers to. When I told him I needed documentation, living conditions, financial movement, behavioral patterns, he simply said, "Send me names and addresses." The third call was harder. I contacted Maya's original bank, the one she'd opened before marriage. I used my calmest voice, the one that made clerks assume everything was already approved. By the end of the call, I knew that with Maya's written consent, I could access archived records. Trails never disappear. People just stop looking. The next morning, I drove past the house. Maya and Caleb had once shared the pale blue colonial on Willow Ridge Drive, the one with the maple tree out front that Lily used to climb. There was a rental sign planted neatly in the yard. Not for sale, for rent. I parked across the street and watched. No toys in the yard. No lights on inside. Empty. I took photographs from multiple angles, time-stamped. Then, I drove to Veronica's home, the one she liked to call temporary, even though it was twice the size of Maya's old house, and sat behind iron gates. I parked down the block and waited. Just after sunset, Caleb arrived driving Maya's car. He walked in like he belonged there. Later, the garage door opened, and that was when I saw it. A concrete floor, a single air mattress, a plastic bin, a space heater that looked older than my first law degree, and my daughter, sitting on the edge of that mattress in her work uniform, eating from a paper bag. Something inside me hardened into steel. I didn't cry then either. I documented photos, video. Evidence does not care about emotion. It only cares about truth. Over the next 10 days, the picture sharpened. Naomi confirmed that the Willow Ridge house was marital property, fully paid off years ago. Rental income, substantial income, was being deposited into an account solely under Caleb's control. Victor obtained footage of Veronica entering the garage while Maya was at work, rummaging through her belongings. Audio of Veronica telling Lily that her mother chose work over family and that good girls stay where they're told. Bank records revealed forged signatures, Maya's name signed with a pressure pattern she never used, authorizing account changes she never approved. By the time everything was laid out in front of me, the situation was no longer ambiguous. This wasn't a messy marriage. This was structured abuse, supported by paperwork and intimidation. When I met Maya again at the same food court, she looked worse than her, quieter, but when I slid the folder across the table and told her we were going to court, something flickered behind her fear. Not hope yet. Something older. Recognition, as if some buried part of her finally remembered who she used to be. By the time we filed, Maya was barely sleeping. Every sound made her flinch. Every text notification tightened her shoulders. I told her this was normal, that when control begins to loosen, fear fights hardest, but knowing something intellectually does not make it easier to live through. We met with Elaine Porter, the family law attorney Naomi had arranged, in a quiet office with frosted glass and a view of the courthouse steps. Elaine didn't waste time on sympathy. She laid out facts the way surgeons lay out instruments: emergency custody, financial restitution, temporary restraining orders, possible criminal referrals. Maya sat very still as she listened, hands folded in her lap like a child, waiting for punishment. When Elaine asked if she was ready to proceed, Maya hesitated, her voice barely carried. If I do this, will they take Lily away from me? That was the poison they had fed her. Elaine leaned forward and said calmly, "No. What they've done makes you the safe parent." I watched my daughter breathe for the first time in weeks. The paperwork moved faster than Maya expected, and slower than she could emotionally endure. We filed for an emergency hearing, citing financial abuse, coercive control, and unlawful deprivation of parental access. Victor submitted sworn statements. The bank flagged the forged documents. Naomi prepared exhibits with ruthless efficiency. All the while, Maya returned to the garage every night, acting compliant, obedient, invisible. That was the most difficult part, asking her to stay quiet while the trap was built around the people hurting her. Caleb grew suspicious. He started calling more often, asking where she was, why she looked tired, why she was talking to me again. Veronica escalated to tightened curfews, reduced access to Lily, reminded Maya daily that judges hate unstable mothers. I coached Maya carefully. Keep records. Save texts. Don't argue. Fear makes abusers sloppy, and sloppy people leave trails. The morning of the hearing, we arrived early. Maya wore a black dress that hung loose on her frame, her hair pulled back neatly, her posture rigid with nerves. In the hallway, we saw Caleb and Veronica, with their attorney, a young man, who smiled too confidently. Veronica's expression shifted the moment she saw us. Confusion first, then anger, then something like panic. Elaine introduced herself formally and requested a private conference. Inside the room, she laid the evidence on the table, piece by piece, like cards in a game they hadn't known they were playing. The rental income, the forged signatures, the photos of the garage, the audio of parental alienation. The attorney's smile vanished. He asked his clients if any of this was untrue. They said nothing. Silence, I have learned, is often the loudest admission. When he suggested settlement, Veronica protested until Elaine mentioned criminal exposure. The room went very quiet after that. The agreement took hours. Maya received immediate temporary custody of Lily, full financial access restored, exclusive use of the marital home, supervised visitation for Caleb, no contact for Veronica. When the judge signed the emergency order, Maya stared at the paper like it might disappear. I squeezed her hand and felt it shake. We didn't celebrate. We moved, straight from the courthouse to Veronica's house, escorted by officers, to retrieve Lily and Maya's belongings. Veronica tried to argue. Caleb tried to apologize. Maya said nothing. She buckled her daughter into the car seat with hands that were finally steady. As we drove away, Lily asked, "Mommy, are we going home?" Maya looked at me before answering, as if asking permission to believe it. "Yes," she said softly. "We're going home." The house on Willow Ridge did not feel like home when we unlocked the door that evening. It felt like a museum after a disaster, empty, echoing, stripped of warmth. The tenants were already gone, their departure hurried by court order, and the rooms smelled faintly of cleaning solution and other people's lives. Lily ran from room to room anyway, her voice bouncing off bare walls, claiming spaces with the certainty only children have. "This is my room again," she announced, standing where her princess bed used to be. Maya watched her with tears sliding silently down her face, the kind that fall when relief finally outweighs fear. That night, after Lily fell asleep on a mattress we'd placed on the floor, Maya and I sat at the kitchen table drinking tea that had gone cold. "I keep waiting for them to knock," she whispered. "I keep thinking this isn't real." I reached across the table and covered her hand. "It's real," I said. "And now comes the part where you learn how to live without flinching." The days that followed were filled with logistics and emotional aftershocks. Locks changed, accounts secured, therapy appointments scheduled. Elaine moved efficiently, filing motions that converted temporary orders into stronger protections. Caleb's apologies arrived in waves texts, emails, voice messages each, one carefully worded to sound remorseful without ever admitting wrongdoing. Veronica attempted a different tactic. She sent letters through her attorney demanding grandparent visitation, insisting she had acted in Lily's best interests. Elaine dismantled that narrative in a single response, attaching exhibits we still had not used. After that, the letters stopped. Maya, meanwhile, struggled with guilt in unexpected ways. She felt guilty for sleeping in a bed again, guilty for cooking dinner without permission, guilty for letting Lily laugh too loudly. Abuse rewires the brain. Freedom can feel like a rule you're about to break. What surprised me most was how grief surfaced alongside relief. Maya mourned the man she thought she had married, the family she believed she'd joined. She mourned the months she'd lost living in survival mode. Some nights she cried not because she was afraid anymore, but because she was angry at herself for believing them, angry at the system for almost failing her, angry at me for not seeing it sooner. I let her be angry. Mothers do not get to be fragile when their children finally feel safe enough to tell the truth. I reminded her that manipulation only works on people who care. That trust is not stupidity. That strength is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move anyway. Slowly, I watched her shoulders lower, her voice steady. Her laugh returned, cautious at first, then real. 3 weeks later, the final hearing arrived. This one was quieter. No dramatics. Just facts, presented cleanly and conclusively. The judge issued permanent orders that mirrored the emergency ruling. Full custody to Maya, supervised visitation only, strict financial restitution, and a standing no-contact order against Veronica. When it was over, Maya walked out of the courtroom differently than she had walked in. Straighter, heavier in a good way, like someone who had stepped back into her own body. Outside, Lily tugged at her hand and asked if they could get ice cream to celebrate. Maya actually laughed and said yes. As I watched them walk ahead of me down the courthouse steps, I realized something quietly profound. Justice is not loud. It doesn't always feel victorious. Sometimes it feels like a door closing behind you, finally locking out the past. Life did not become perfect after the court orders. It became honest. That was the difference. The first weeks were quiet in a way that felt unfamiliar, almost suspicious. No sudden phone calls. No footsteps in the driveway that made Maya freeze. No permissions required for ordinary things like grocery shopping or taking Lily to the park. The house slowly filled with signs of real living, again drawings taped to the refrigerator, shoes kicked off near the door, the sound of cartoons on Saturday mornings. Maya returned to work without checking her phone every 5 minutes. She started sleeping through the night. The shadows under her eyes faded, replaced by something steadier. One evening, as we cooked dinner together, she paused and said, almost surprised, "I didn't apologize today." Not once. We looked at each other, then laughed. Healing does not announce itself. It sneaks in quietly, disguised as normal. 6 months later, Lily turned 6. We hung balloons from the maple tree out front and strung paper lanterns across the backyard. Children from school ran through the grass, shrieking with joy, their laughter sharp and bright in the summer air. Maya moved among them easily, handing out juice boxes, kneeling to tie shoelaces, smiling without effort. Caleb attended briefly under supervision, respectful and restrained. He left early. Veronica did not come at all. That absence spoke louder than any apology ever could. As Lily blew out her candles, she wished with her whole face scrunched tight, then announced proudly that her wish had already come true. "I wished that Mommy stays happy," she said. Maya turned away quickly, but not fast enough. I saw the tears. This time, they were the good kind. Later that night, after the guests had gone, and Lily slept upstairs in her own bed, Maya and I sat on the porch, listening to cicadas hum in the dark. She asked me a question I had been waiting for. "How did you know what to do?" I thought about it before answering. I told her the truth. I didn't know everything. I just knew that silence protects the wrong people, and documentation protects the truth. I knew that fear thrives in isolation, and strength grows when someone finally says, "I believe you." I told her she had saved herself the moment she spoke up in that food court. All I did was stand beside her and refuse to let anyone rewrite her reality. Maya nodded slowly, as if placing that truth somewhere safe inside herself. Now, when I think back to that worn uniform, the coins in her hand, the way she wouldn't meet my eyes, I understand how close we came to losing everything that mattered. Not to violence or catastrophe, but to quiet, normalized cruelty. This story isn't about law, or revenge, or even justice. Not really. It's about paying attention. It's about believing the people you love when something feels wrong. And it's about remembering that control dressed up as concern is still control. Maya is free now. Lily is safe. And our family, though changed, is finally whole in the ways that count. If this story moved you, reminded you of someone, or helped you see something more clearly, subscribe for more real stories like this, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might be the one someone else needs to hear today.